welcome to the intersection of politics and money. My name is Karabole Tata. You're watching Political Capital. The drama behind your text rant. What is going on at SARS? Yesterday, the commissioner told us that his deputy, Jonas Makhado, has resigned, but media reports seems to suggest that the commissioner himself may soon be on his way out. We will get an in-depth story later on in the show, but first up, did you see the papers?
2 South African Airways executives are suspended after a forensic probe made into the state-owned airline. The executives are Chief Financial Officer Phumeza Nansi and ex-CEO Musa Zwane. This may well be part of President Cyril Ramaphosa's resolution to clean state-owned entities, says Bloomberg. Opposition growing to IPP contracts. The conclusion of additional power purchase agreements with independent power producers would burden South African consumers with unwanted and expensive electricity. So says the Business Report in a week when 27 IPPs were frustrated over signing contracts and a pending court case. Under the current energy scenario, South Africa would have more than 60 gigawatts of capacity by 2022 against a flagging demand of below 30 gigawatts. So argues Ted Blom, a partner at Mining and Energy Advisory. Listeriosis scare. Tiger Brands had recalled 3,500 tons of its enterprise ready-to-eat chilled meat products by Monday. This, as it awaits the outcome of a report it commissioned on why the ST6 strain of Listeria was found at its Polokwane facility, its spokesperson told News 24. Departure of SARS boss Moyane imminent, so says Times Live. South African Revenue Service Commissioner Moyane could find himself out of a job in a matter of days. Speculation is that the former Deputy Finance Minister could take up this post. And speaking of Moyane, let's get into our first story of the night.
A face that has been on her screen and in her stories for the last 4 years. Paulie van Wyk, a Scorpio journalist working for the Daily Mavericks investigative unit, has written many stories about SARS Commissioner Moyane and the organization since 2014. From the get-go, she says Moyane's appointment raised eyebrows.
At the time, to take you back, Moyane was appointed as Commissioner of SARS in September 2014. And the strange thing about the appointment is that it was a highly specialized job. You have to know the business of tax really, really well. And Moyane had no tax experience whatsoever.
Once again this week, Van Wyk has had to pen another story about SARS and its tax boss. This time, it was about the SARS 3. Ivan Pillay, Johan van Loggenberg, and Andries Jans van Rensburg. The ex-SARS officials are accused of unlawfully spying on other officials in what is now termed Project Sunday Evenings. This allegedly happened amid political infighting back in 2007.
The SARS guys, which is Helgard Lombard, got access then after the fact that he installed it, listened to the footage, transcribed it, and gave it right back to Ivan Pillay. And that act, in certain circumstances, might be described as spying without authority on the NPA.
Van Wyk says this very theory is flawed.
If it was a sanctioned National Intelligence Agency project at the time, so NIA has changed to SSA now, it's now the State Security Agency, but at the time it was NIA. So if it was a sanctioned NIA project, it might not have been illegal, but we don't know that. But if it was not a project, it might be illegal spying. It might be the interception of communication that you were not authorized to have. There might be an argument for it, but there might also be a legal argument for it that they are all not guilty of anything. So that to this spying or not spying is what the new charges relate to.
The legal eye representing the SARS trio, Bernard Hartz, points out the legalities involved in the so-called Project Sunday Evenings or SARS rogue unit.
This notion of a rogue unit bore its existence from a report called the Sikhakhane Report. The interpretation with respect of the Sikhakhane panel is wrong in law. That was pointed out by the attorneys representing Minister Gordhan, Gildenhuys Malachi, already in August 2016, pointed out to the Hawks that the definition of the unit as a rogue unit was wrong in law. All you need to do is read section 3 of the specific legislation and you will see clearly there that the notion that this was a rogue unit is an error in law.
Another legal expert, forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan, says this is all the doings of a captured criminal justice system.
Zuma set out to capture the criminal justice system years ago, and he started putting his plan into action by 2014. And by 2015, his plan was complete. He had control of the police, the Hawks, and the National Prosecuting Authority. More importantly, he had control of SARS, which is the revenue agency for this country. Now, if you have somebody, a group of people like that, the Hawks, the police, the Prosecuting Authority, and SARS, all acting in conspiracy with each other, I call it racketeering, because what they're effectively doing is they're running a criminal enterprise.
O'Sullivan insists that the charges against the SARS 3 are politically driven.
The case against Pillay and Villachrenberg, it will fall apart. It will fail. It will fail because it's a politically driven case. What they should be doing is arresting Tom Moyane and Makhado and putting them behind bars. And their failure to do so will actually see them going to prison. I've made it clear to Sean Abrahams last week. I've written to him and I've told him, you will go to prison. I've had enough. When Paul O'Sullivan says you're going to go to prison, you better believe it, you're going to prison, and I'm going to send that man to prison.
It's also important to look at what Tom Moyane did not do. So I can ask you, when last did South Africa hear of a big tax investigation that we put through the courts and where we got a 2 billion rand back from that tax investigation? That didn't happen. Instead, Tom Moyane helped the Guptas to get 70 million in VAT back. Illegally so, because they apparently did not pay it into a Gupta company, they paid it into another account, which might, if proven, might point to money laundering. And it's, in terms of the SARS Act, it's illegal, you cannot do that. And then there are several other things. But yeah, Tom Moyane is just bad news all over.
At the face of all these alleged wrongdoings, the tax boss remains firmly confident about his future at SARS. There is talk of him being replaced by Mcebisi Jonas. He remains defiant.
I think the roots are deeper. I'm firmly rooted into this organization. I don't feel any insecurity. On the contrary, more exuding energy and passion to execute my responsibility as indicated in my contract, especially the contract that I have with the South African people, the taxpayers in particular.
While giving a brief background of how the charges came about, Moyane says the authorities will deal with the legalities of it.
This matter was raised in 2015-2016, when I laid a complaint after a confession. In fact, it was a confession by 2 employees, and I don't want to get into the merits and the demerits thereof. And it is common cause to indicate that the matter is now been raised by the National Prosecuting Authority. Whether I believe that this unit existed or does not exist, I think the competent authority will be able to respond to that.
Court is set to hear the case on the 9th of April and thereafter postpone it to another date. Only time will tell whether indeed the SARS 3 spearheaded a rogue unit. Aviwe Mtila for CNBC Africa, Johannesburg.
Sunday's announcement by the South African Reserve Bank to put VBS Mutual Bank under curatorship has caused quite a stir in many circles. Just today, the bank's majority shareholder, Vele Investment, says that it will be applying to the South African courts to challenge the decision by the Reserve Bank to put the bank under curatorship, claiming that the decision was unconstitutional. Let's take a look at the background behind the bank.
This is Thohoyandou in Limpopo in northern South Africa. When you drive in here, the first thing you see is the town's famous calabash, a pot for African beer. It's been appropriate this week because the bank born in this region has provided a basin full of controversy for the people of Thohoyandou. VBS, the Bank of the People, founded here in 1982, was put into curatorship by South Africa's Reserve Bank. The path to the branch has been a corridor of uncertainty all week, with worried customers withdrawing money.
When I came here, the ATM was out of order, so I decided to drop out.
I don't have any problem. I'll go and withdraw all my money.
Worry over the bank has permeated right down to the fruit and vegetable trade on the streets of Thohoyandou. Masindi Madao has held an account at VBS for 15 years. The bank helped her buy a home. It is also her job to deposit money at VBS on behalf of her 20 fellow storeholders here. Many are worried and want to withdraw. The problem is that the account is worth more than 50,000 rand, so it can't be withdrawn all at once. It got even worse when they went to the bank.
I feel very worried about what's going on. Yesterday we went to VBS on the 14th to access 1,600 rand and they couldn't even give us 1,600 rand. We feel very scared because we have a lot of money with them and they can't even give us that little money. So what's really going on at VBS?
The bank that helped President Jacob Zuma pay back the money. The bank lent the former president 7.8 million rand, about $500,000 to pay back taxpayers' money spent on his Nkandla private residence in KwaZulu-Natal. It was a controversial loan that the bank itself described to Forbes Africa as a drop in the ocean of its vast balance sheet. VBS chairperson Chifiwa Matodzi told Forbes Africa in February 2017 that the criticism of the presidential loan was unjustified. There were no underhand dealings. They all said, go and find out if there's bribery involved. If you do things right, these things fall out. People realise that we are not interested in politics. I've never met the president. They came with their corruption accusations, but they found nothing. There were racism undertones. He also said, countries should be built from their rural areas, and that's what VBS has been doing better than any other bank. As a business, we are exploiting the vacuum that has been created by mainstream banks. Just over a year later, as a business, they are heading for curatorship. It has left account holders like Masindi Madao in Thohoyandou worrying how they're going to get their money out. Chris Bishop for Political Capital.
Stay tuned to the show. We'll be back with the legal eagle at the center of the SARS debacle on the other side of this.